You painted your wooden fence. You stained it. Last summer you sealed it with the most expensive product on the shelf. And it's still peeling, splintering, going gray, and rotting at the posts. Meanwhile, in Japan, cedar fences and facades stand for the better part of a century, with no paint, no stain, and no sealer at all. What they use is a finishing technique from 18th century Japan that the modern wood care industry has spent decades trying to replace with chemicals, and never matched. It's going to save your fence. But first, we have to deal with what's already on it. The peeling paint and the splintering boards won't leave on their own, and all of it has to come off before any finish goes on. So we'll fix the wood itself, not just coat the symptom. So we'll split this in two. First, how to strip the fence back to sound, bare wood. Then, how to finish it the Japanese way so the rot, the mold, and the peeling never come back. We'll do it in 4 moves. Strip the failed paint, clear the gray and mildew, fix the rot at the base, and then put on the finish that makes all of it permanent. Quick note before we start. I put together a guide that collects the low-cost methods Japanese households have used for generations to keep a home and yard in good order. It's linked below. Scan the code on screen or tap the link. That's the only time I'll mention it, so if you want it, it's there. Start with the worst offender, the failing paint. Take a scraper and a stiff wire brush and walk the fence, knocking off every flake that's already lifting. Don't try to feather in the peeling sections to save them. They're too far gone. And here's why you don't just sand it smooth and paint over it a 4th time. Wood swells when it rains and shrinks when it dries, sometimes a full cycle in a few days. Paint is rigid. It can't move with the wood, so it cracks along the grain. Water gets under it, and the next swelling cycle peels it off in sheets. Every coat you added over the years made it worse because more paint means more rigidity. 3 coats might buy you 18 months. 5 coats, and you're repainting every season. Once the loose paint is off, knock down the rough spots with 60 grit paper, then go over them with 100 grit, just enough to feather the edges where old paint meets bare wood. Don't grind. The wood underneath is still good as long as you leave it there. If the fence is buried under 5 or 6 coats and scraping gets you nowhere, use a citrus-based gel stripper. Skip the methylene-chloride strippers. The EPA banned them for consumer use back in 2019, and for good reason. The citrus gel works slower and leaves the wood intact. For the failed stain, the gray patches, and the black mildew, there's one simple product Japanese woodworkers have leaned on for generations: oxalic acid, sold at any hardware store as wood bleach for about $12 a tub. Mix roughly 4 ounces of crystals into a gallon of warm water and brush or spray it on with a garden sprayer on a cool, overcast day. Wear gloves and eye protection and keep it out of your storm drain. Wait about 15 minutes. Scrub lightly along the grain with a stiff nylon brush and rinse well with a hose. The gray lifts off as a brown runoff, and the warm cedar color comes back underneath. Here's the chemistry simply. Sunlight breaks down lignin, the natural compound that binds the wood fibers together. That degraded lignin is what turns the surface gray and lifts it into splinters. The oxalic acid strips the damaged layer off and exposes the sound wood beneath. The same wash clears the mildew, because mildew is just spores feeding on moisture trapped under a failing finish. Take the finish off and bleach the surface, and there's nothing left for them to eat. Now the leaning post. Its base sits in earth that holds moisture against the wood around the clock, and it's been rotting from the outside in, just below the soil line where you can't see it. Dig down about 6 inches to expose the damage and brush away the soft, rotted wood until you reach sound wood. Drill a series of small holes into the good wood from the base of the rot upward, then soak the whole base with copper naphthenate. One of the few legitimate wood preservatives still sold. Green tinted, about $20 a quart. Wear gloves and let it dry. Then backfill, but this time pour a quick-set concrete collar at a slight angle around the post so it sheds water away from the wood instead of trapping it against it. A post saved this way can last another 15 to 20 years. Longer than the finish on most fences. For boards that are split all the way through, replace them. Cedar pickets run about $4 to $7 each. They won't match the rest of the fence at first, and that's fine. There's a Japanese idea here worth borrowing. Kintsugi. When a ceramic bowl breaks, you mend the cracks with gold lacquer. The repair becomes part of the object instead of something you hide. A fence is the same. If 10 or 20% of the boards are structurally gone, pull them, put in fresh cedar, and finish the whole thing together. The finish we're about to apply pulls everything into one tone within a season, and the repair disappears into the whole. Quick one while we're here. Tell me in the comments what you've been finishing your fence with. Paint, stain, or seal? And did it actually hold up? Now the part that actually earns the word Japanese and makes forever honest. You've got two options. The first is the real thing. Shou sugi ban, also called yakisugi. You scorch each cedar board on the weather-facing side, moving a propane torch slowly and evenly along the grain until the surface becomes a layer of black carbon about 1/16 of an inch thick. Then you go over it lightly with a stiff wire brush to knock off the loose ash and finish with a thin coat of natural oil rubbed in with a rag. That carbon layer is the whole weatherproofing. It sheds water, blocks ultraviolet light, and resists the fungus and insects that feed on bare wood. Done well, a charred cedar surface can last decades with little more than a light re-oil every 10 to 15 years, and modern testing supports its resistance to rot, ultraviolet damage, and insects. It's having a real moment in high-end architecture right now for exactly that reason. You can buy pre-charred yakisugi siding from specialty suppliers, or do it yourself with a hardware store torch for almost nothing. There's also the original version with no torch at all. 3 cedar boards are bound together at the ends into a triangular chimney, lit with a small fire at the base, and left just long enough for the inner faces to char evenly, then pulled apart and quenched in water so all 3 come out finished at once. That's how a village would have done it more than 2 centuries ago, and it still works exactly as well today. A serious safety word, because this is open flame. Char the boards one at a time, ideally laid out away from the fence line, your house, and any dry grass, not against a standing fence near the structure. Keep a hose or extinguisher within reach, work on a still, low-risk day, and check your local burn rules first. Treat the torch like the strong tool it is. The second option is simpler, less dramatic, and works almost as well for most homeowners. A penetrating oil finish. Rub pure tung oil, raw linseed, or a commercial penetrating finish, like Penofen or TWP, into the wood along the grain. Let it absorb about 20 minutes, then wipe off the excess. The oil moves into the wood fibers and protects from within, while the surface stays able to breathe. Moisture can still leave when the weather dries. Reapply once a year on a warm, dry spring day, and the fence holds a warm golden cedar color with no peeling, no splintering, and no mildew. A gallon of tung oil treats a long fence with plenty left over. One more piece worth doing while you're out there, because most fences die at the post before anywhere else. Japanese fence carpenters have used a simple idea for over 1,000 years. Keep moving air around the wood. Set a cedar collar at ground level with a small air gap between the post and the soil, so the base sits a fraction of an inch off the wet earth, and air can move under the joint. Rot only takes hold where moisture has nowhere to leave. That fraction of an inch is the difference between a post that lasts 15 years and one that lasts 70. Do the same at the top. A flat post top collects water that sits, freezes, splits the end grain, and lets rot run down the center where no finish reaches. Cap each post with a small angled cedar cap with a slight overhang on all 4 sides so water runs clear. You can cut these from scrap cedar in an afternoon, a couple of dollars of wood per cap, and the post tops stop being the failure point they almost always are. end grain is the most vulnerable surface on any piece of wood, and sealing it from above is half the job almost nobody does. Now let me say something plainly about the fence care aisle, because the internet is full of bad advice here. Start with the pressure washer, since everyone reaches for it first. Yes, it makes the fence look clean for about 10 minutes, but the pressure drives water deep into the boards and tears up the soft summer grain, and both of those speed up rot the moment the wood dries. Honestly, just skip it. The oxalic wash does the same cleaning without forcing moisture in. Same goes for the rest of that shelf. The $30 Revival bottles that mix silicone and stain leave a film you have to strip off again before anything real can bond. The spray-on stains coat half as well and fail twice as fast. The caustic deck strippers chew up the wood, can't legally be washed into a storm drain, and leave a residue you have to neutralize. None of it is necessary, because what we put on the wood works on a completely different principle. It finishes from within instead of coating from above. There's a detail in the old method worth pausing on because it shows how seriously this was taken. Traditional yakisugi didn't use just any cedar. The boards were quarter-sawn, cut so the growth rings run perpendicular to the face, because quarter-sawn cedar chars more evenly and resists cupping under the heat. The village carpenter chose those boards months ahead, stacked them with spacers so air could move between them, and let them dry to around 12% moisture before a single fire was lit. That patience is why charred cedar facades from the 1800s are still standing today in places like Okayama, looking much as they did when they went up. The method isn't only the fire, it's the patience around the fire. And there's timing wisdom that makes everything easier. Oil best on a warm, dry day in spring or early autumn, with the wood between 60 and 80 degrees. The fibers are open, the wood is dry, and the oil moves in fast. Do any charring in autumn, when it's drier, calmer, and the fire risk is lower. Never oil or char in cold or wet weather. The wood can't absorb anything when it's full of moisture, and the finish just pools on the surface and stays tacky for weeks. Most people stain their fence in the wrong season, which is half the reason the stain fails inside 2 years. A quick word on the board that won't cooperate because most fences have one. If you've stripped, bleached, and oiled a board 3 times and it keeps graying and splintering within months, that's not the method failing. That's the board telling you it was never properly dried before it was installed. A careful carpenter wouldn't build with green lumber, but plenty of fences were thrown up with the cheapest wet wood on the lot. If that's your situation, treat the fence well, but accept those boards have a shorter life, and plan staged replacement with kiln-dried cedar. Swap the worst 1 or 2 every spring. By the 3rd or 4th year, the bad wood is gone, and the new wood has caught up in color. Let's talk money. A gallon of pure tung oil is around $40 and treats a 100-foot fence with leftovers. Brush and rags, $5. Oxalic acid wood bleach, $12. Cedar collars for the post bases, about $5 each. Copper naphthenate for a rotted post, $20. The whole setup comes in under $90, and the upkeep after that is under $30 a year. Set that against repainting every 3 years, $150 to $400 in materials each cycle, plus the weekend on a ladder, and the day the paint cycle finally collapses and the fence has to come down, replacement for an average yard runs somewhere between $4,000 and $12,000. The math isn't close. The Japanese approach is cheaper from day one, and the gap widens every year. Here's a plan you can start this season. This weekend, strip and bleach, scrape the failing paint, brush on the oxalic solution, rinse it down, and let it dry a few days in open air. The next weekend, the structural work, dig out rotted post bases, pour the angled concrete collars, replace any board split through. The weekend after, on a warm, dry afternoon, the finish. If you're going the yakisugi route, char the boards one at a time with a slow, even pass, brush off the ash, and wipe on a light coat of oil. Safely, away from the structure. If you're going simpler, just rub oil into the bare wood along the grain, let it sit 20 minutes, and wipe off the excess. After that, once a year in spring, give the fence one light coat of oil, and check the post bases. That's your fence work for the next few decades. The deeper lesson here isn't really about a fence or a torch or a bottle of oil. It's a way of thinking. Tend rather than fight. Finish from within rather than coat from above. Maintain in small, steady steps instead of waging one big battle every few years. Most of the modern approach to home and yard care was shaped by companies selling you the next coat. The Japanese approach was shaped by households who already learned the next coat was the problem. Once you see the difference, you can't unsee it. Your fence doesn't have to be a battleground every other spring. It just needs a torch or a bottle of oil and the small, steady attention a Japanese carpenter would simply call normal. If you want all of this in one place, the guide's linked below. Tell me in the comments whether this changed how you think about your fence, and subscribe for more of the Japanese method. Next week, we're bringing a weathered gray deck back to life, without a single drop of stain. See you then.